This is probably the latest in the day I've probably done a video. But, you know what? I wanted to sleep in today. So I did. A little bit of self-care for myself. As well as do some final preparations for today's video, which I've done. And I'm not going to lie, I actually saw the thing I was most looking forward to so far in 2025. It's awesome. I'll get to that later. So, happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome to Wild Card Weekend. Before I get into that, in today's video, let's talk about my low Muhammad act of kindness. Let's see. I guess my low is, even though I do feel good about the fact I slept in and, you know, tried to take care of me, I do feel kind of bad I took a long time to get here right now. I apologize for that. Don't worry. What you're about to see will definitely make up for it, I assure you. My high is, well, the fact that Wild Card Weekend, man. You kidding me? Wild Card Weekend. I can't believe we're already here. You know, the Super Bowl's just barely over a month away. I can't believe you made it this far. I'll tell you what, though, when I stop wearing this jersey, it's definitely going to feel like a giant whiplash. But you know what? Honestly, this season's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really glad I got to do this. Spoiler, you're going to be hearing me say that a lot more often as we get closer to the Super Bowl. My act of kindness. Held the door for some people yesterday. Actually, I went to Nick's last night, and I was about to leave, and I saw these two girls show up, and, you know, there was an empty seat next to me, and I was about to leave, so I'm like, hey, you know, I'm about to leave, you know, feel free to take my seat. So I offered that they can have my seat when I leave. So that was nice. Okay, so if you're not familiar with how this works, when Wild Card Weekend starts, I like to think of the Super Bowl, the potential Super Bowl matchups that I want to see. And because I'm a fan of Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic, I do this as a top 11. Now, why do I go top 11? Because the Nostalgia Critic always goes one step beyond, and so shall I. Of the 49 possible Super Bowl matchups that we could get, these are the 11 that I most want to see. Ironically, number 11 is actually a Super Bowl that I would be very tempted not to watch. Speaking of which, number 11, the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. It'd be an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. And sadly, again, it'd be a Super Bowl that I'd be tempted not to watch. And why is that? Well, I can sum it up in 2 words. Go, Cowboys! I should also explain the rules for this video that I do. Every year I do this video, I always explain the rules. So, rule number 1, you have to be a team that's made the playoffs. You know, there's 7 teams in the NFC. If you are one of the teams from the NFC, one of the 7 teams from the NFC, one of the 7 teams from the AFC, you are eligible to be on this list already. You are eligible to be one of the 49 potential Super Bowl matchups we could be getting on February 16th. Congratulations for making it this far. Honestly, right now, I see this as a brand new, right now, you either you win or you go home. Like, every game is a game 7. It all comes down to this. All depends on who wants it more. The second rule I have is one team needs to represent the AFC and one team needs to represent the NFC. Because, again, that's how the Super Bowl works. And as I alluded to earlier with my number 11, there has to be something really interesting about why this Super Bowl would be exciting. Like, what would make this Super Bowl interesting above, others? And as I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Philadelphia Eagles would be a great example, because it'd be an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. And it would also make a whole bunch of Dallas Cowboys fans, such as myself, incredibly angry. Because Pittsburgh would win yet another Super Bowl. Meanwhile, the Eagles, even winning a Super Bowl, boils the blood of any Dallas Cowboys fan. But while I don't like either organization, I do like the state of Pennsylvania. And it would be good for the state of Pennsylvania. I really think, like, Pennsylvania is the kind of state for me that doesn't really get enough love. At least not that I see. Like, people, I think, like Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, and like, that's it. Like, they don't even think about, like, Gettysburg is where I went to college. I never see that place get enough love. Or Harrisburg. Harrisburg is the capital of Pennsylvania. Or Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where the Little League World Series is. Like, this would be huge for the state of Pennsylvania. And I think that'd be awesome. It's just a shame that I don't like either organization. But if it happens, it happens. And yeah, I'd watch. I don't know if I'd root for anyone, but I would at least watch. Okay, now, number 10 is actually the Super Bowl that, in terms of seeding, statistically is the least likely to happen. The Denver Broncos versus the Green Bay Packers. For those of you who don't know, it would actually be a Super Bowl rematch. Super Bowl 32 specifically. And if I could be personal for a second, I've shared the story before. Growing up, my favorite color was green. And when I found out that there was a team called the Green Bay Packers, that's why I liked them. See, before I was a Cowboys fan, I was actually a Green Bay Packers fan, solely because, my favorite color is green. Green Bay Packers. Why would that not entice you? And the Green Bay Packers are doing really well. And then the Super Bowl happened. And they lost to the Broncos. I'll give you guys a second to laugh at that. And believe it or not, the story actually gets worse. Because after Denver won that Super Bowl, I said, way to go, Denver. Bet you can't do it again. And they did it again. So, as you can imagine, there's a little bit of childhood trauma. But you know what they say, a little childhood trauma builds character. Now, number 9. The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Green Bay Packers. It would be a rematch of Super Bowl 45. I remember where I was when I saw that Super Bowl because it was my sophomore year of college. I actually went to a place called The Attic. And fun fact, every time I went to The Attic to watch the Super Bowl, every team I rooted for in the Super Bowl always won. And I didn't like the Steelers. But, so by default I had to root for Green Bay. Yes, Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl win. I rooted for him. Little way I know that Aaron Rodgers turned out to be a total jerk, but that's neither here nor there. Not to mention, with Jordan Love and Russell Wilson probably being the starting quarterbacks, it'd be the second Super Bowl in history with 2 starting black quarterbacks. You're going to be hearing that a lot, by the way. Number 8, the Buffalo Bills versus the Washington Commanders. Yes, I have one of Dallas's rivals on here as on this list because, again, they made the playoffs. But actually, it would be a rematch of Super Bowl 26. It was actually the second Super Bowl that the Bills lost. So, again, can the Bills finally win a Super Bowl? And can they do so against a team from the NFC East? See, and I'll share this as I go, Buffalo's been to 4 Super Bowls in a row. They're the only team that's ever done that. Every team they lost to was from a team from the NFC East. They lost to the Giants, then that team. I know I really shouldn't. You know what? I'll say they were called the Redskins then. Listen, I know I'm probably going to get some hate for just saying that word, but listen, that's what it was called then. We can't deny that that's what they were called then, okay? There's the Commanders now. That's it, okay? Just, again, if you don't learn from history, do repeat it. And then they lost twice in a row to the Dallas Cowboys. The Bills did. So if the Bills make it to the Super Bowl and it's against the Commanders, can they beat a team from the NFC East? We don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out, possibly. But number 7, is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Green Bay Packers. Now, this one is very significant because not only would it be the second Super Bowl in history with two starting black quarterbacks, but Kansas City would have a chance to three-peat, and it would be a rematch of Super Bowl I. Yes, the very first Super Bowl that ever happened was between the Kansas City Chiefs and Green Bay Packers, and Green Bay won that Super Bowl. Although, don't worry, Kansas City would later win a Super Bowl 3 years later, but I'll get to that in a minute. My number 6, and the Super Bowl that I actually would be very tempted to watch, the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Los Angeles Rams. An all-California Super Bowl. We've had an all-New York Super Bowl before, but we've never had we've never had an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. We've never had an all-Florida Super Bowl, and we've never had an all-California Super Bowl. We've never had an all-Texas Super Bowl either. Those are New York, Texas, California, Pennsylvania, and Florida are the 5 states, at least to my knowledge, that has both teams, one from the NFC and one from the NFC, that could meet in the Super Bowl. We've had an all-New York Super Bowl, I just said earlier, the Giants and the Bills, but that's all we've had so far. We have the potential of an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl, as I alluded to earlier, between the Steelers and the Eagles, and we have the potential to have an all-California Super Bowl between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Los Angeles Rams. And not only would it be an all-California Super Bowl, it'd be an all-Los Angeles Super Bowl. Oh, trust me, that city... And I just realized something. Because the 2028 Olympic Games are going to be taking place at Los Angeles. If the Rams and the Chargers made the Super Bowl, we would be getting a sneak peek of what the Olympics in 2028 are going to be like. I guarantee you. Actually, let me write that down. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Number 5. The Buffalo Bills versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Same as before against the Commanders. Can the Bills win a Super Bowl, and can they do it against a team from the NFC East? Seriously, the Bills lost 4 Super Bowls. They never played against the Eagles. Meanwhile, the Eagles are actually... Listen, I may not like the Eagles as an organization, but I will definitely acknowledge they are playing good. And again, I hate the Eagles as an organization. I like Jalen Hurts. I like Saquon Barkley. I like Lane Johnson. I like the players. Although I will say this. Every time I think Jason Kelce is going to give me a reason to dislike him, he does something totally awesome and he totally redeems himself. Jason Kelce, I'm a huge fan. I know you have a talk show. If you ever got me on your show, that'd be awesome. I really am a fan. I should dislike him, but I don't. It's odd, really. Anyway, but seriously, Buffalo versus Philadelphia. I think, again, can the Bills win a Super Bowl against the team from the NFC East? That'd be pretty interesting. Okay. Now, when I talked about the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers earlier, that was Super Bowl I, I said that the Kansas City Chiefs would win a Super Bowl 3 years later in Super Bowl IV against the Minnesota Vikings. And that's why I just realized I had that as I didn't necessarily plan this, but technically, yeah, I did. But, yeah, my number 4 is a rematch of Super Bowl IV. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Minnesota Vikings. Can Kansas City three-peat, or will Minnesota finally win a Super Bowl? Because like the Bills, the Minnesota Vikings have also been to 4 Super Bowls. And like the Bills, the Minnesota Vikings have never won the Super Bowl. Oh, I'll be talking about that momentarily. Number 3. Now, I'm sure any football fan out there has seen this meme of the Super Bowl that America wants to see, and I'll get to that later, versus the Super Bowl that we're probably going to get. The latter is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And I have to say, even though they said that as a joke, and even though a lot of people would be sick of the idea of seeing Patrick Mahomes again in the Super Bowl, I can't deny that's a rematch I want to see. That's right. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles battled each other in Super Bowl 57. And the Eagles actually almost won that Super Bowl. So it would be a rematch of Super Bowl 57. It would be the second Super Bowl with two starting black quarterbacks. And again, can Kansas City three-peat? Actually, hold on a second. Let me look at my notes here. Okay, yeah. So if it was the Steelers and the Packers, the Chiefs and the Packers, or the Chiefs and the Eagles, at least on this list, those three Super Bowls would be the second Super Bowl in history, has the potential to be the second Super Bowl in history to have two starting black quarterbacks. Excuse me. I'm getting my numbers. I'm excited. Can you blame me? I'm really excited. Now we get to if any of you guys have ever made a top 5 or a top 10 or whatever number you're going to use list, the common theme I see a lot of people say is figuring out your number. Like, the ones at the very top are the easiest to figure out. And then probably the ones at the very bottom, and it's the middle that's difficult for me to decide upon. For me, that was pretty much the case. Because figuring out what my top 2 Super Bowls that I want to see were fairly easy. The problem is, though, I can't tell you how many times I kept going back and forth between either one. In fact, with me about to say what they are right now, I'm very tempted to switch it up. I really, that's how close, I still, honestly, okay, I'm okay with what I have here. What I have here is good as is. So, my number 2 Super Bowl matchup that I want to see would be the Buffalo Bills versus the Minnesota Vikings. Now, in the past, whenever the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings have made the playoffs, I've always put this matchup on my top 11 somewhere. But this is the first time I've ever actually had it this high. In fact, as I said earlier, this was almost my number 1. I'll explain why in a minute. As for why this is even this high on the list at all, I mean, listen, I just said throughout the video, both the Bills and the Vikings have been to 4 Super Bowls, and they lost all 4 of them. If this matchup were to happen, we'd finally have a team that won a Super Bowl and one team that would sadly keep that streak alive. But that's what would make it most exciting. You don't think any football fan's going to eat that up? It'd be awesome to see. As for why I put it this high, because again, I put this on the list before, again, if the Bills and Vikings both made the playoffs. I've never put it this high before. Reason being, under those circumstances, even I knew when there were teams that were just better. Not that those Bills and Vikings teams that made the playoffs were bad. They were just teams that were factually better. Usually be like the 49ers or the Eagles or the Chiefs or whoever the Bills and the Vikings would have to face in the playoffs. This is the first time I've ever put it this high because this is probably the one year where I think it'd be most likely to happen. I mean, listen, every time I talk about the Bills, And now, if you're not going to be the number one seed, for the love of God, don't let Kansas City be the number one seed because I don't want them to go to Arrowhead. This is the first time I've ever actually seen a Buffalo Bills team that's so good that I really do feel they could march into Kansas City and win. That's how confident I am in this Bills team. As for the Vikings, listen, I know they lost to the Lions very handily so, but I get the feeling that they knew they wanted it to be this way. Any football fan who's been, a fan, would know that it's very doable to beat the same team twice in a season. But 3 times? That'd be the real question. Because, listen, at some point during the playoffs, the Vikings are going to have to face the Lions, barring some sort of crazy miracle that the Lions lose before that happens. But I get the feeling if the Vikings and the Lions play each other in the NFC Championship, I really do think the Vikings could pull it out. They could pull it out. Again, Dan Campbell, the coach of the Lions, he's coached a solid team. I truly do believe that, this is the best Lions team we've seen in years. In fact, the Lions lost in the NFC Championship last year. Which reminds me, analytics are so stupid. Like, the Lions easily could have made it to the Super Bowl last year had they just taken the points when they needed to. Kick the field goal, take the points. That'd be the one thing that would keep the Vikings from making it to the Super Bowl, because having lost in the NFC Championship last year, the Lions are going to learn from what happened. And that's why my number one is the Bills versus the Buffalo Bills versus the Detroit Lions. Yep. The Super Bowl that America wants, as that meme I alluded to earlier. Listen, I've already talked about the Bills enough. I think this Bills team could march into Kansas City and beat them. That's how confident I am in the Bills. In fact, they actually beat the Lions earlier too. So we get a rematch of that regular season game. But also, like most football fans, after the Lions went 0-16, I've written them off for years. Years. Only recently have I really been on board with, okay, you know what? The Lions might actually be for real. I first noticed that when they beat Green Bay a couple of years ago in that last regular season game. It was Aaron Rodgers' last game as a Green Bay Packer. And they marched into Lambeau Field and they won. It was Aiden Hutchinson's rookie year. I think he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he did. Anyway, and from that moment, I'm like, you know what? I think the Lions are going to be good. I didn't think they'd be as good as they were. I mean, I knew they'd take a leap. I didn't think they'd take as big of a leap as they did last year. And then again, I also didn't think my Cowboys would lose to the Packers the way they did in the playoffs. Yeah, again, I've said this before. I may be a Cowboys fan, but I have zero faith in my Cowboys. After that playoff game, I have zero faith in our coaching. Even less faith in Jerry Jones. But it's not about that. It's about the Bills and the Lions. And the other teams I mentioned that are on this list. So with all that said, yeah. The Super Bowl that America wants is the Buffalo Bills versus the Detroit Lions. And that's the one I want to see most of all. I really think that's the Super Bowl we're going to get. I really and truly think we're going to get that Super Bowl. And don't get me wrong, any of these Super Bowl matchups I mentioned are all likely to happen. Remember, playoffs start right now. You win or you go home. Every team at this moment in time that's made the playoffs has an equal chance of making the Super Bowl, whether you realize it or not. But yeah, this is the team, this is the matchup I think we're most likely going to get, that we all want. And it's going to be awesome when that happens. If you think, actually, so here's what I'll do. I'll show you guys the list. If you guys want to pause it. I also wrote down my reasoning for each one too. So I'm going to pause this and see. Get a thumbnail for you guys. Now, if your team made the playoffs but you're not on this list, that's no shame on that. These are the matchups that I feel I want to see more than others. That doesn't mean I hate those teams, except maybe the Eagles and the Steelers. But it just means that there's matches I want to see more. I mean, I didn't put the Texans on here. I didn't put the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on here. I didn't put the Ravens on here. All three of those teams are good in their own right. I didn't put them on the list. These are just the matchups that I feel like I want to see most of all. But just because I have these as my matchups that I want to see, that in no way, shape, or form changes who I think is going to win today. Which reminds me, I believe, oh, hold on. Okay. I think both the Chargers and the Ravens are going to win today. Yes. I didn't even put the Ravens on my top 11 list. I think the Ravens are going to win tonight against the Steelers. But I've been wrong before. And if I am wrong, no one's going to be more surprised or happy than I will. I think, much like the college football playoff, we're going to be in for a really good series of playoff games. I think a bunch of them are going to live up to the hype. I can't wait to talk about these playoff games more as time goes on. And I'm excited. So, I hope you liked this video. If you did, like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on social media. As always, I am very humble in this video. For all of you guys who watch and enjoy for today, hopefully you have a wonderful Saturday. Wow, I can't believe I forgot that. Happy wild card weekend, everyone. And remember, if you guys want to talk, channel always be here to lend, always your back. Take care and make good choices. 607 all day, baby.